I'm very happy to be here. I'm very honored to be here with you.
Estou muito feliz em estar aqui com vocês, muito honrada.
Um, it's a chance to be with you and with what is so close to my heart as it is for you, the Pathwork. Like many of you, or if not all of you, I owe my life really to the Pathwork. I'm very happy to share something from what I have received. And tonight I will.
Just a moment. Eu estou muito feliz de estar aqui com vocês e poder partilhar com vocês algo que é muito caro para mim, que é o caminho com o Pathwork. Então, eu estou muito feliz em poder partilhar com vocês esse momento.
So tonight I'd like to share some thoughts on what we call phase 2 Pathwork.
Então, hoje eu gostaria de partilhar com vocês o que a gente chama de a segunda fase do Pathwork.
The deepest part of the journey.
É a parte mais profunda dessa caminhada.
The part of the journey that invites us to align with the reality of being.
É essa parte que nos convida a nos alinhar com a realidade do ser.
Beyond the lower self and the higher self.
Que vai além do eu inferior e do eu superior.
The part of the journey that invites us to allow or to have a taste of oneness with the divine.
Essa parte que nos permite alinhar e ter uma pequena chegar perto desse alinhamento com o que é estar alinhado com Deus.
So Regina, tell me when you're going to start translating simultaneously.
Luigi will do it.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Okay.
So, so phase 2 Pathwork.
Let me just explain to them how to hear in Portuguese.
Okay, so now I can start speaking more regularly, Luigi?
Yeah, but let me just first explain to them how to listen to the audio in Portuguese.
Okay.
Ok. Bom, primeiramente, boa noite a todos. Meu nome é Luigi e agora eu vou passar algumas instruções para vocês. Bom, primeiro, se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida ou precisar de alguma ajuda, por favor, direcionar as mensagens no chat para o Mário Bruno para poder não atrapalhar os outros estudantes. E para maximizar nosso tempo hoje com a Erena, a gente vai utilizar a tradução simultânea. E aí agora eu vou explicar para vocês como vocês fazem para ouvir o áudio em português. Bom, primeiro vocês devem procurar o ícone tá chamado de Interpretation ou Interpretação, que vai estar na parte inferior da sua tela, que parece com um globo, é fácil de achar. E ao clicar nesse ícone, você verá a opção de português e inglês. E aí você clica em português para ouvir o áudio em português. Se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida de como fazer isso, é só mandar mensagem no chat que a gente ajuda vocês. Ok, go ahead, Erena.
Okay, thank you, Luigi. So I was saying a moment ago that what we name phase 2 Pathwork relates or is about the journey to the deepest layers of consciousness, beyond the exploration of defenses, beyond the penetration of the mask, deeper than the understanding of recreation of childhood hurts that make it impossible for us to meet our deepest longing for alignment with divine energy. And of course, all of that is very, very important. It is the journey to opening the breath, actually. It is the journey to freeing the feelings that we learn to suppress and deny when we're young, when we're little, when we're babies. And we try to feel safe maneuvering in this world. When we learned when we develop all kinds of beliefs about what makes us lovable and acceptable, all of which make it impossible for us to feel all our feelings, because all of those ideas restrict our belief about what is right and what is wrong and who we need to be. You all know what I'm talking about. You've been doing this work. We all do this work, and it's important. As we learn to breathe, as we open the breath, we allow energy to flow through us. And that is very important aspect of connecting with divine energy. You know, in the Aramaic language, which most of you know, is the ancient language out of which Hebrew and Arabic was developed. The word for God and the word for breath has the same root. God is breath. So the more I breathe, the more I invite divine energy. The more I feel, the more I breathe. So the early parts of the journey to understanding how our blocks in life or our difficulties in life, there is the difficulty to create what we long to create, is the result of ideas, images, we call them in the pathwork, about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, is very, very important. But as some of you know, we can visit those images and we can explore recreations again and again and again and again. And often we find ourselves repeating patterns that create pain. So the journey, there comes a point in the journey, the guide says the ego needs to hop on the train. That's a phrase from the guide. And help us ask the question, how come I keep repeating patterns that I have explored? How come I keep recreating again and again relationships out of beliefs that I have explored and have found no longer useful? How come? That's the point in the journey where one needs to start questioning, what does it mean to be a child of God? A lot of the work we do on the pathwork is to help us stop submitting to our parents. I think you all know what I'm talking about. But then what comes after that? If I can stop submitting to my parents, but how do I then take on the obligation to be a child of God? And I know the word obligation is kind of funny, right? One might think we're talking about submission again. Submission is being something or doing something or feeling something because I think I have to, so that somebody out there loves me, accepts me, thinks I'm okay. Obligation to God comes out of a choice, the choice to be in alignment, the choice to be in oneness. That choice has obligations. And the second phase of the pathwork is really about taking on that obligation and honoring it. So the question is, what is that obligation? So I will give you my quick answer. And of course, we each can find our own words to describe that obligation. The way I hear the guide speaking it is that that obligation is to let go of pursuing safety. Let go of pursuing safety. Actually, the guide talks about safety very early on in the lectures. In lecture 17, the guide talks about how all our struggle, all our pain, all our difficulties in life is because we're trying to pursue safety. We're trying to be safe. And the guide goes on to say, the only safety is to realize there is no safety. The only safety comes with finding the courage to know that there is no safety. There is no safety in God. If we align with God energy will take us wherever it takes us, and we cannot be safe from it. So the second part of the journey, obligation, that comes with the desire to go beyond stopping submitting to our parents and taking on being a child of God, is to stop pursuing safety. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because the pursuit of safety leads to separation. The guide says separation from divine energy, and the attachment to that separation is the lower self. So I'd like to just ask you to just take a breath for a minute, and I'll go back. We'll go a little backwards. So just breathe for a moment. I'd like you to think of a newborn. Most of you, if not all of you, have been near newborns, real newborns, first few days of life. That baby, when the baby's born, is hardly present to this life. They sleep most of the time, or they're out there somewhere. Even when they wake up to eat, they don't fully wake up. They suck the breast or the nipple and they're still asleep, connected with some energy, cosmic energy that has brought them here. They're not very much at all relating to this world. But very soon, that baby starts realizing that there's a world around them. And I'm not going to go into talking about child development here. You all know what happens. First, the baby relates to their own body. And then they recognize that there is mother. And then they realize that when they cry, mother comes, and so on and so forth. So little by little, this baby learns to control life around them. They learn mechanisms with which they get love to come to them. And you know, the baby, the young baby, of course, does not think of love the way you and I do. Love for the baby is very literal. A full stomach, a body that is not anxious, being held, warmth around them, that is love to them. And they learn how to bring it to themselves. But the more the baby learns to do that, the more they become more alive, more present in this world. And after a while, they learn to walk. And after a while, they learn to do well in school. And after a while, they learn to create a career, create a love life. And as we become more and more able to create more in this life, the more we separate in our mind from connection to divine energy, the more we believe that we are the ones who create our life, the more we come to believe that it is up to us to create what we need, the more we believe that we act independently and we develop ideas about who we are and we attach to those ideas. And of course, a lot of those ideas are the result of early experiences, things that are told to us about who we are from our parents, from culture, from TV, from school. We learn to relate to life the way we learn to relate to our parents. We keep recreating. And after a while, we really forget that there is anything else but who we have decided we are. I think you all know this. We go to have a sessions with helpers, with therapists. We look at why we're stuck. We look at why we cannot bring to our lives what we long for. And we continue believing there's something wrong with us, even though what we have found is that the reason that we cannot create what we long for is because we have wrong ideas about life. We keep returning to the belief that there's something wrong with us. Now, if I believe that life is controllable and I'm the one who has to control it, then of course I will never feel I'm good enough, because I am pursuing an illusion. I am pursuing an illusion that can never be manifested. So the more I do that, the more I engage in a vicious cycle that separates me more and more and more from my deepest longing, which is to be in alignment with God. In lecture 250 in the Pathwork, the guy talks about grace. And he says, when we pray, whichever way we pray, we always pray for grace to come to us. But the guide says grace is not going to come to you because grace is always present. Where is it going to come from? The guide says, grace creates you. Grace is always here. Grace is what you breathe. Grace is what breathes you. So when you pray for grace, the guide says, that also supports the illusion that you're separated from grace. The guide says the true prayer is to see what is the blindness that makes me think that grace is not always present. And of course, that blindness lives here, lives in the mind. I'm the one in control. I'm the one who needs to do it. I'm the one who has to do it all by myself. And again, I want to repeat, that's the child that believes that that's then how my parents will love me. That's how I will make enough money. That's how I will have a good sex life, or whatever it is that I imagine will make me happy. But it's not only the child, okay? It's also the result of having a mind and thinking that that's who we are, what our minds tell us. Now, in some ways, let me just stop here a minute again and just give you a chance to breathe. The guy tells us in some ways that's inevitable. That's an aspect of being human. We have an obligation to live the embodied life. And in order to live the embodied life, we need to use our brain. We need to understand how life works. We need to make decisions. We need to be able to evaluate things. We need to learn how not to hurt our brothers, our sisters, and so on and so forth. The problem, the guide says, becomes when we end up thinking that that's who we are and that's what our value is. That we are a controlling mind, and that the more we control, the more valuable we are. That's the road to separation, and the attachment to believing I control life is a definition of lower self. Negative intention, if you wish, to stay separate. Now, the lower self has many layers, of course, you know. We can say that the 5-year-old who goes to the playground and sees a toy that another child has, and he or she wants that toy, and he goes over or she goes over and grabs that toy and hits the child that the toy belongs to, and takes the toy and runs away. This is something I experienced last week when I had taken my grandson to the park. That's the lower self. In a way it is, you know, it's definitely not the higher self, but it comes out of ignorance. That child doesn't know better. That child wants the toy and is trying their best to satisfy what they believe is a need. So as adults also, it's not only children, as adults also, sometimes we create hurtful experiences for ourselves and others because we don't know better. I was working with a client the other day who was telling me that her child, her 3-year-old child, hits her and bites her. And I was asking her, why does she feel helpless with that? And I was asking her, does she have any ways to set a boundary for that child? And she became very, very upset with me. At some point, I said to her, she said, well, what kind of boundary can I create? I said, well, I don't know. I said, maybe you can give him time out. Maybe you can put him on a chair and tell him he has to sit on a chair for a couple of minutes after he does something like that. She became very, very upset because she thought I was telling her to be cruel. Now, I don't know, maybe some of you think it's cruel, but I was trying to help her give the child what the child really needs, which is a boundary. In a way, in not giving the child a boundary and letting him go around biting her and hitting her, she was hurting the child. You can say, well, was that her lower self? This woman didn't know any better. She didn't know any better because she is so stuck in a belief that anything she does is wrong, that from that belief, she comes up with not working ideas of what is right. From that belief that everything is wrong about her, she comes up with wrong ideas about what love is. So to her, giving a child time out when the child bites her and hits her, is not loving. Maybe you can call it the lower self, but it's ignorance. She doesn't know better. But then there are deeper layers to lower self. When I know better and I continue acting in hurtful ways to others and myself. And of course, when I hurt others, I hurt myself. And when I hurt myself, I hurt others. There's no distinction, really. then I am acting out of not ignorance, but an attachment to beliefs of what will bring me safety. I was working with somebody else, and of course, these people that I work with, and some of you work with, I don't know how many of you are helpers, whatever they bring to us also lives in us. We all have the same kind of, or similar kind of vicious cycles we live in. So this other client that I was working with, she was talking about her mother, her aging mother. She has a sister, my client, and the care of the aging mother, my client believes, is totally up to her. And she is angry with the sister who doesn't help her. And she's angry with the mother who doesn't get the sister to participate, and so on and so forth. And you can fill the gaps. So this is something she's looked at again and again and again and again. And yes, there are her images there. Images about what makes her a good girl. Images about that have her believing that in order to be a good daughter, she has to totally sacrifice her needs, and so on and so forth. But in exploring it today, what she was also talking about, and she came to realize, is that in sacrificing more than she needs to sacrifice, because we all sacrifice for people that we love, but in sacrificing more than she has to sacrifice in this triangle, then she can be superior to her sister. She can be the one. Pride, right? She has a lot of pride in being the one. She has a lot of pride in looking down at the sister and saying, I'm the one, therefore our mother. There's an attachment this woman has to who she is. She is the one. And she still, so I was working with her today, and I was asking her to breathe and imagine, I was helping her with some kind of guided imagery. Imagine how would it be to face her mother and her sister, letting go of this belief that she has to be the one. And she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. At the end of the session, she came to say, I love it. I love it. And I'm willing to be sacrificing more than I need to sacrifice to support this image that I'm the one. That is lower self that doesn't come out of ignorance. That is lower self that comes out, that is the result of supporting a false idea of self. Actually, even though my client, and there are pieces of me that relate to that, some of you might be relating to that, maybe not exactly that way, but I know in me there are places where I want to be the one, no matter how much it costs me. But in that, if I am attached to being the one, there is no space for grace to come in. Actually, again, grace is always there. There is no space for me to know that grace is present. And I stay separate. So phase 2 pathwork, in a way, lecture 213, that in the pathwork that is called Letting Go, Letting God, really summarizes phase 2 pathwork. In phase 2 pathwork, the journey is about letting go of all attachment to any idea of who we are. Any idea. And letting God dance us. Letting go of the safety of knowing. Letting go of the safety of believing that we can control outcome, that we can control life. Now, the guide says letting go doesn't mean we don't try our best, but letting go means that even in trying our best, we are open to experience life in any way that life is coming to meet us. Letting go of choosing and picking which experiences we are going to accept. Choosing and picking what we will consider in God's name. Letting go of, not letting go of preferences, we all have preferences, but letting go of attachment to our preferences. And one of the preferences that I think you all can relate to, that we all spend a lot of energy supporting, is preference of higher, what we call higher self. Actually, a lot of us who work with the pathwork make the mistake of identifying real self with the higher self. We tend to believe that the real self is the higher self. Phase 2 pathwork invites us to really get it, that the real self is both the higher self and the lower self, the yes to God and the no to God. The yes to God and the no to God. Whenever there is a yes to God, there is also a no to God present. If there wasn't, there would be silence. I want to repeat that. If there is a yes to God present, there has to be a no to God present also. Otherwise, there would be silence. God is silence. This is the deepest teaching of the pathwork for me. We all can summarize the deepest teaching differently, but God is silence. Wherever there is a longing that is not met, whether there is the longing for a deeper relationship to another human being, for more abundance in our lives, for more acceptance of a brother or a sister, there is also a fear of that longing, the guide says. There's a few lectures directly addressing that, but it's throughout the lectures. If there wasn't a fear, there wouldn't be a longing, because the longing would be manifested already. So phase 2 pathwork. What is the sacrifice I need to make to come out of separation and live the yes to all of life, however it shows up in me, through me, or at me? And you can, again, the guide in each lecture calls the sacrifice with a different name. But fundamentally, it's the sacrifice of safety. The sacrifice of believing I'm the one, I got it, I'm in control. If only I can live out my idealized self-image, whatever that might be. If only I can understand. I will accept you if I understand you. I will love you if you look, act, blah, 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 the way I think you should look and act. I will say yes if I feel no fear. You know, we think of courage as the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to dance, quote unquote, dance, even when I'm afraid. So this is the invitation of the guide. Again, I know I'm repeating. Yes, it's important to feel our feelings so that we can breathe. And in order to feel our feelings, we have to visit experiences of our childhood and free that child that still lives in us from the fear of not having her needs met, her physical needs, her emotional needs, and so on and so forth. We have to stop recreating in our adult life those early experiences out of wrong ideas of how we can have our needs met. But the guide says that's beautiful, but it's not enough. Because as long as we believe that we can control life, our mind will get us back to recreating. So are we willing, the guide says, are we willing to not pursue safety? Are we willing to come out of attaching to ideas about who we are and what life is that we believe will keep us safe? Are we willing to come out of illusion? This is the question that phase 2 pathwork is helping us dance with. And, you know, phase 2 pathwork is not in the second part of the lectures, it's throughout the lectures from 1 to 258. And it's not about phase 1 finishes. So now phase 2 starts. Some of you will relate to this as I am dealing with my aging, because I'm 73 years old. And as a number of people dear to me in my life are dying, friends who are also aging, my sister died last year. So as it's becoming more and more impossible for me to deny the reality of my death, sometimes I'm finding myself returning, you know, to being in life like a child, asking for attention. You know, my children try to help me because I have difficulty walking and this and that, and they try to give me help. And I deny help sometimes. I'll give you an example of that. There was snow in New York and I couldn't cross the street because I was afraid I'll slip. I have a bad knee. And a number of younger people stopped and asked me if I wanted help. And I kept saying no, but I wasn't moving. Okay? Because I had to be the one. I had to be able to cross the street. That was the child in me that had come alive again after so many years of pathwork sessions and therapy and meditation and knowing about having to let go of safety and knowing that I need to accept my aging. Okay, it happens. So I have to go back, and look again at the child that doesn't want to feel pain, the child that wants to be in control, and release her again. She came up again. Now I'm talking about aging. That's my reality right now. Crisis in our lives bring us back to act in a younger way again. So the work of phase 1 never totally ends. But when we move to open up to what phase 2 asks us, which is to keep looking at how we close our eyes and our hearts to the presence of grace out of valuing control as much as we do sometimes. Even when we go back and have to deal with the child in us, we can free ourselves faster and easier. So I'm going to stop here. We can say a lot more about this, and those of you who might choose to do the workshop will dance with all of that. But I'd like to stop here and open up. There's a lot of you, and hopefully you have a lot of questions, but we can only maybe take 1 or 2, right, Luigi?
Yes, I'll explain how to ask the questions.
Ok.
Vão ser feitas as perguntas.
Ok, então, para você fazer essa pergunta, dependendo de qual versão do Zoom você tem, ou você tem que clicar em participantes na parte inferior da sua tela, e aí você vai ver o íconezinho azul de levantar a mão, ou caso você já tenha o Zoom atualizado, tem uma carinha feliz escrito Reactions na parte inferior da sua tela, você clica nela também vai dar a opção de levantar a mão, caso você queira fazer uma pergunta. Vai sair.
Luiz, tem que trazer todo mundo para a mesma sala.
Já trouxe.
Or if you don't have a question, maybe you want to speak something that is your wisdom about this phase of the work.
E talvez se vocês não têm uma pergunta, não tem problema. Vocês podem também trazer alguma percepção sobre esse trabalho, né? Do que eu falei agora.
O Raimundo levantou a mão. Pode falar, Raimundo.
Boa noite a todos. Eu fico muito satisfeito de estar aqui ouvindo a Erena.
Good evening to everyone. I'm very glad to be here hearing Erena speak.
A minha pergunta é sobre a questão da segurança, de abrir mão da segurança, que a minha percepção é que, neste momento, eu tenho um medo que não é consciente, é um medo no meu corpo. É algo inconsciente.
Okay. My question about letting go the safety.
I'm sorry, Regina, can you start again?
Yes. Raimundo says that the question he has about letting go the safety in this moment, it's because the fear is not conscious and he feels the fear in his body.
Então, eu gostaria de saber como eu posso abrir mão da segurança que eu não controlo, né? Essa segurança, essa insegurança inconsciente, essa vontade inconsciente de ter segurança. Né?
So he wonders how he can let go of this safety because he keeps having this unconscious need of feeling safety.
Raimundo, I want to ask you a question if I understand you.
Raimundo, gostaria de fazer uma pergunta, né, para ver se eu compreendi o que você falou.
Is there something, some thought you have that says fear? You should not feel fear.
Será que tem algum pensamento seu, uma ideia que te diz, medo, eu não deveria sentir medo?
Is there some belief that a mature person, a person who is aligned with God, does not feel fear?
Tem alguma crença sua de que uma pessoa adulta, uma pessoa que está alinhada com Deus, ela não deveria sentir medo?
Certamente, existe sim. Não só em mim, mas eu vejo para todo lado. Isso eu vejo que isso é algo que é muito presente.
Not only for myself, I feel this, but I also see in many other places that this is what happens.
Yes. So let me ask you a question.
Então eu vou te fazer uma pergunta, Raimundo.
What is it that tells you that a mature person or a person who is aligned with God does not feel fear? Where did you hear that?
A minha pergunta para você, Raimundo, é o que te diz ou de onde você ouviu dizer que uma pessoa adulta, uma pessoa conectada com Deus, ela não deve sentir medo? De onde vem essa ideia?
De onde vem eu não sei, mas parece de uma voz interna mesmo, talvez uma fala de autoridade, de que é preciso só não ter medo mesmo. Talvez não seja até bem banal mesmo dizer, homem não tem medo, é preciso enfrentar a vida, essas coisas.
Ok. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but maybe this inner voice or authorities. But probably I could say that it comes from beliefs such as men cannot fear.
I'm sorry, it comes from where?
This belief that men should not feel fear.
Right, men should not feel fear. How do you know that that's true, Raimundo?
Como você sabe que isso é verdade, Raimundo?
Just breathe.
Respira. Isso, respira.
How do you know that's true?
Como é que você sabe se isso é verdade?
Eu não sei se isso é verdade. Na verdade,
Okay, hold on.
Ok.
You don't know that it is true.
Você não sabe. Você não sabe se isso é verdade, mas você acredita nisso.
É isso.
You don't know that it is true, but you believe it.
Você não acredita que isso é verdade, mas você não sabe se isso é verdade, mas você acredita nisso.
É isso.
Me too.
Também. Eu também.
Sometimes.
Às vezes.
But this is so the mind tells you should not feel fear.
É a mente que diz para você, você não deve sentir medo.
As long as you feel fear.
Enquanto você sentir medo, né?
Your energy should go to avoid what you're afraid of.
A sua energia vai em evitar aquilo que você teme.
What an illusion.
É uma baita ilusão isso, né?
Fear is just a feeling.
O medo é só um sentimento.
And if we allow ourselves to feel fear, it lasts a few seconds.
E se a gente nos permite sentir o medo, ele vai durar só uns segundos.
But the fear of the fear can keep us prisoners the rest of our lives.
Mas o medo do medo pode nos manter prisioneiros por uma vida.
You know, I am Greek, as I think Letizia told you. And in Greek, we have this expression.
Eu sou grega, né? A Letícia deve ter comentado já. E na Grécia, a gente tem esse ditado.
The expression goes, whoever saw God and wasn't scared. Whoever saw God and wasn't scared.
Quem que já viu Deus e não estava apavorado? Então, na Grécia tem essa frase. Quem já viu Deus e nunca estava apavorado?
God is fierce.
God is...
Fierce.
Deus é medos.
No.
Não, fierce like
No.
a strong.
Yeah, strong,
Okay.
not frightened. Yeah.
Ok.
God is strong.
Então Deus é forte.
God is bigger than
Deus,
the mind can contain.
Deus é maior do que a nossa mente pode conter.
Why should you not be afraid, Raimundo?
Por que você não deveria estar com medo, Raimundo?
Eu diria, mentalmente, talvez, eu digo que é meio intuitivo ter medo, mas também, por outro lado, parece intuitivo não querer ter medo.
In my mind, I can say that it's kind of intuitive not to fear.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's also intuitive to fear.
Yeah. And the mind believes itself.
E a mente acredita nela mesma.
Like my mind.
A minha mente, né? Como a minha mente.
Gratidão.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.